Hi guys, I'm here for Mandy Chapter 46 and Chapter 47. So I could finish the book today if I read two chapters. So the last thing we read was Anne and Bill were at the house and they had asked Mandy if it would be okay with her if they adopted her. So there was a lot of crying that went on last time, I remember. So this is Chapter 46. Things seemed to happen very fast after that. Matron came downstairs and was delighted to learn that everything had turned out so well. The Fitzgeralds were anxious to take Mandy back to Cranton House with them that very evening. But strangely, Mandy decided she would prefer to wait until the following day. She couldn't help thinking of Sue, and she knew that she could not say goodbye to her friend so abruptly and leave her to spend the rest of the night alone. So it was decided that Bill would call for Mandy the next morning. The Fitzgeralds bid her a fond good night, and afterward Mandy broke the wonderful news to her friend Sue. As she had anticipated, it was a difficult and ambivalent moment for Sue. So this means that Sue's struggling with it because Sue feels happy for Mandy, but she's also very sad for herself because she's not getting adopted, and she's very sad that because she'll miss Mandy. So ambivalent means like her feelings are kind of like all over the place. Oh, Mandy, you're so lucky. What a fabulous thing to happen. I know you'll be very happy. There was a pause, and then quite suddenly Sue burst into tears. Mandy put her arms around her. Oh, Sue, don't cry. Please don't. Think how super it's going to be. We'll be able to see lots and lots of each other. You can come to the house and play and spend the night sometimes, too. Sue rubbed her eyes and nodded. I'm really terribly thrilled. It's just I'll miss you so badly. She blew her nose hard. I'll miss you too. The girls clung to each other for a moment. Sue looked up and said, Golly, how lucky it was that they came to see you tonight. You would have been gone by tomorrow. Mandy nodded, and it was a sobering thought. Because Mandy had planned to run away the very next morning and start a new life. So if she had run away in the morning like she had planned, she wouldn't have been there if the Fitzgeralds had waited another day. The following morning, Mandy was consumed with anxiety. She could hardly wait for Bill to come and pick her up, and she had the terrible fear that he might forget about it or change his mind completely. Her packing was done in no time at all since she'd prepared to leave the night before anyway. The entire orphanage knew about her departure, and when Bill finally drove up in his car, it seemed that every child was waiting to say goodbye. It was almost more than Mandy could bear. She clambered into the front seat of the automobile and rolled down the window to wave to everyone. Matron was smiling happily and waving. Sue was smiling too, but her eyes were filled with tears. Mandy's last impression as the car pulled away was of the young, eager faces of the orphanage children and their voices raised high in farewell. Goodbye, Mandy. See you soon. God bless, Mandy. Please come back and visit. Mandy waved until the orphanage was completely out of sight. When she turned back in her seat, she discovered she was crying. Bill looked across at her and smiled fondly. A little sad, he asked. Yes. And happy, too? Oh, yes. A bit both. Well, that's understandable. It's silly, but I wish they could all come, too. It's terrible somehow to leave them all behind. Bill nodded. I know, Mandy, I know. But those children will find a life for themselves one day, just as you have. You'll see. It might not be right away. Perhaps it will be when they grow up or when they marry, but it will happen. And in the meantime, Matron isn't going to let them be unhappy now, is she? No. Mandy wiped her eyes. There was silence for a moment. The car sped through the country lanes, and Mandy looked out of the windows at the crisp winter morning. Traces of snow were everywhere. Sunshine bathed the countryside in a clear light, like a watercolor painting. Mandy shook her head in bewilderment. I just don't understand why it was me that got to be so lucky, she said. Oh gosh, Mandy, what shall I tell you? Bill looked thoughtful. I suppose luck does have something to do with it, but you're a very special little girl, and I think you're strong and not afraid to go looking for your life. You know, I think you would be a good example to the orphanage children. Perhaps one day when you're truly settled in with us and you'll know that we're not ever going to let you go, you might consider going back to visit them from time to time. I'm sure it would help them." Mandy thought about it. "I'd like that," she said simply. And here's our little bunny for the end of that chapter. Now, I am going to read you the very last chapter in Mandy today also. So, last day with Mandy. Chapter 47. Bill braked the car to a halt just outside the Bill Gates to Cranton house. Mandy remembered passing through them a couple of weeks earlier and how unhappy she had been. The long driveway stretched ahead. Mandy drew in a deep breath of the sweet fresh air coming in through the open window. She looked at the trees and the fields all around her and experienced a feeling she had never felt before. It was a warm contentment, something like the feeling one gets when hot tea and honey slide down into one's stomach, only 10 times better. Bill said, "You've never really seen Cranton House, have you, Mandy? Come on, we've got time. I'll give you a quick guided tour." So Mandy has seen the inside of the house, but because when she was there she was still sick, she couldn't see the outside of the house. So she hasn't seen, like, driven all around and the whole property. He drove the car around the beautiful estate, pointing out the various places of interest. "There's the dairy, Mandy, and the courtyard beyond used to be old kennels. There were hay barns and places for grain storage and silage and tractors and equipment." Mandy saw cows in the cowshed and a huge bull in a tall outside stall. There were chickens and pigs and horses. A large silly dog ran around in happy circles trying to scare the chickens. There was a big kitchen garden, and beyond were rows of empty wire pens. "These are for the baby pheasants when they're strong enough," Bill explained. "We'll be breeding them early in the year. You'll see." Bill swung the wagon onto a wide, rutted track. A ribbon of water ran under a small humpbacked bridge, and beyond was the flat, smooth surface of a beautiful lake. Bill stopped the car on the bridge and pointed. "Mandy, do you see the trees on the island in the middle of the lake? Notice the ragged collection of twigs and mud and old leaves in the tops of them? They're herons' nests. We must have had at least 3 pairs this year. I bet they'll be back in the spring." Mandy remembered the heron she had seen flying over the cottage one day. It must have been heading for the lake. She was struck by a thought. "Bill, I suppose the little stream by the cottage runs into the lake, doesn't it?" "Yes, darling, it does." "Who used to live in the shell cottage?" Mandy wanted to know. "Well, at first no one did. Believe it or not, in the old days it was sort of a playhouse. My ancestors would have picnics there. It was a place to ride to shelter to when it rained, that sort of thing. That's why the shell room was built. It was purely a fun house. But then of course, when times became difficult and the family was so hard up, it was rented out to whoever could afford it. Incidentally, Manders, what would you like to do with the cottage? It's yours now, you know. I thought I'd make a sign to that effect and put it on the gate, and I can paint it up a bit. Would you like to plant the garden again this year?" Mandy thought about it. She became suddenly serious. She remembered last summer and her passionate concern for the garden and the house. But now it didn't seem so important. Her new life promised such a wonderful future. Would she want to spend time in the cottage? She looked at Bill, and suddenly she knew what it was that she wanted to say. "Bill, if I could do anything with Shell Cottage, if it's at all possible that is, what I'd really like to do is let the other children at the orphanage have it." Bill looked surprised, but Mandy warmed to her subject. "You know, like Sue and everybody. They could come to it and play and have a part of the garden to make it pretty. I think it would be marvelous to have a special place like that. It would mean having something of their very own, don't you see?" There was a pause. Bill's eyes narrowed in thought. Mandy waited for him to speak. When he did so, finally, it was quietly and deliberately. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Manders. It would be simple to grant a right of way through the woods. We'd have to build a gate in the big wall, but it could be indeed a playhouse for the children." He turned and smiled, "Just as it used to be." That's a good thought, Manders. I'll speak to Matron about it this evening. He turned the ignition key in the car and started it up again. Now, darling, better get back to the house. Anne'll be wondering what happened to us. I told her we'd be there for lunch. Mandy felt a thrill as Cranton House came into view. The car drove around a circular lawn and came to a stop in front of the house. Bill paused a moment, his hands resting on the wheel. He grinned at Mandy. Well, Manders, here you are. You are home. Mandy's feelings soared with happiness, and laughter bubbled up inside her. She gave Bill a brief hug and then stepped out of the car and raced up the steps to the front door where Jonathan and Anne were waiting for her. Hello. Mandy's voice was breathless with excitement. Hello, Mandy. Welcome. Anne folded her arms. Jonathan was grinning good-naturedly as he patted her on the back in an embarrassed sort of way. Bill ran up the steps to join them, and as the family turned and walked through the front door, Mandy experienced a great, warm feeling of contentment. She realized that never again would she go through long nights of aching sadness. There would be no more depressions that she couldn't understand. At last she had a home and a family and people to love and be loved by. She had found what she had been looking for all her life. And that's the end of Mandy. I do have a bunny to show you, and then there's also a picture. So we have been reading Mandy, I think, since literally like March 20th or something. So we've been reading Mandy for over 2 months. Been reading it together, being happy for Mandy and sad for Mandy. So I'm very happy that Mandy found her home. It was very nice of her to share the shell cottage with other friends. So I don't even know what this whole book is just my favorite. So I don't know if I could pick my favorite part of this book, but I want you to write about your favorite part today. I think I can't even pick a favorite part. It's so hard for me. But if I had to pick a favorite part, I think my favorite part would be the days when Mandy planted the garden. So I think her planting the garden and making the cottage her own are some of my favorite days in the whole book. I also, of course, love the fact that they adopted her, and that was very kind of them. But I think that when she had that space of her own in the very beginning and she discovered the cottage, those days of discovery, that's my favorite part, really. So we are going to do a few other things with Mandy, but for today, write about your favorite part. What's your favorite part of Mandy? Please tell me. Do you like it as much as I do, or were you bored for the past 2 months? So tell me the truth, because I really want to know what you think about Mandy. Mrs. Burnell loves this book so much she doesn't know why no one ever made it into a movie. I think it would make a fabulous movie, and I don't know why no one has done that. Maybe I should tell somebody, a director or something. So have a great day. I love you very much. Thank you for sharing Mandy with me the past 2 months, and I will see your comments later about your favorite part. And tomorrow we'll do a project with Mandy. Bye, guys. Love you.